This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to come and free to go. Free to come and free to go. Open up the book of stars. Open up the
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Karmic Evolution's Astrologically Speaking. I'm your host, SHERI HORN HASAN of Karmic Evolution Astrology, coming to you on July 8th, 2021 from Contact Talk Radio. Just a quick reminder that this show aims to bring you the truth about astrology and your soul's karmic evolution. So before I get into my show, today I am updating the show with current Astro News you can use, but replaying the June 24th interview with astrologer and author ALEX TRENOWETH. So before I get into the Astro News you can use, first my usual housekeeping stuff, which is to tell you that you can check out my Karmic Evolution Facebook page, posts on the current astro energies, along with my new and full moon posts, and that you can sign up for my newsletter, Conversations About Consciousness, on the Facebook page as well. Also, if you've missed any previous shows or you want to re-listen to a specific one, just go to karmicevolution.com, click on Radio Show in the upper right-hand banner, and scroll down, and you'll have access to all the previous shows. In addition, I'm continuing to offer my discounted 1-hour Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading to listeners for only $99. So do you want to gain greater consciousness about your soul's true mission and purpose in this lifetime? Move from chaos to clarity in your relationships, career, finances, or health? Heal old karmic wounds and co-create your own future happiness and success? Awaken to your true potential and highest destiny in this lifetime? Well, that's easy when you take advantage of my special discounted offer for listeners. Again, a 1-hour Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading for only $99. Just email me, that's Sheri, SHERI, at karmicevolution.com, and book your reading today. At almost half the regular price, conscious awareness has never been so easy or so affordable. Okay, so let's get on now to this week's Astro News you can use. Last week, I spoke about the energy inherent in the Mars in Leo opposition to Saturn in Aquarius and square to Uranus in Taurus, the aspects of which perfected on July 1st and July 3rd, respectively. So it pays to review now some of the things this energy triggered since the June 24th Capricorn full moon, and to remember that these occurred during the waning portion of the monthly lunar cycle, which is still in effect as we speak today until the Cancer new moon arrives tomorrow, July 9th, at 18 degrees and 1 minute of the nurturing sign of the Mother at 6:17 p.m. Pacific time and 9:17 p.m. Eastern time. Now, what we've seen between then and now is what I called last week reversals of fortune, or the erosion of foundations thought to be previously solid. We've witnessed this in the collapse of the Surfside Miami, Florida condo in the wee hours of June 24th as the Capricorn full moon approached. We also witnessed several other news stories of note throughout the collective that depict this same eroding of foundational energies, though some more symbolically than physically. So since the news of a sudden Uranus, physical Taurus, building Saturn, collapse in Miami, Florida, tragically resulted in loss of life, Mars, that's shaken our faith in the strength of the foundation upon which this and other structures like it were built years ago, we witnessed also last week's Supreme Court decision, read judgment, read Saturn, to uphold Arizona's restrictive new voting laws, Aquarius, based on the foundationally unproven assumption that voter fraud led to an erroneous outcome in the November 2020 U.S. presidential election. Now, this decision not only erodes the foundational core of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, landmark federal legislation that prohibits racial discrimination in voting in the U.S., it also paves the way for further erosion of what was previously thought to be a solid, irreparable belief, one that's evolved from our founding fathers' concept that all men are created equal, a belief which over the course of U.S. history further extended itself to women as well. And there are many other stories, some of which I mentioned last week, to which we may now add some from around the world, such as the sudden assassination yesterday of, and forgive me because I don't speak French at all, so I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, Jovenel Moise, I think, president of Haiti yesterday. And his assassination sparked violence throughout this Caribbean island nation that has now been placed under a state of siege by the interim prime minister. According to the New York Times, quote, Haiti has a long history of political instability. The country has been rocked by a series of coups in the 20th and 21st centuries, often backed by Western powers, and has been marked by frequent leadership crises that have driven Haitians into the streets in protest. It's unclear whether the political implications of this week's assassination will follow a similar pattern. And then there's the ongoing saga of South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma, who, according again to the New York Times, quote, the Constitutional Court had found guilty of contempt for failing to appear before a commission investigating corruption accusations that tainted a president once best known for fighting apartheid. He was a compatriot of Nelson Mandela's back in the day, who apparently, once he got control of the country, became corrupt. So also today, Japan banned all spectators from its Olympics, although it had previously decided to allow in only Japanese nationals. So talk about strong evidence of reversals in fortune in all these cases, right? And that's not even mentioning those of the former U.S. president, now prominently in the news. So we've seen this evaporation of what was thought formerly to be irreparable foundational principles, both in the U.S. and elsewhere, happen under the series of Mercury and Gemini squares to Neptune, which I also talked about last week, the third of which culminated just 2 days ago on July 6th. And just as Mercury leaves his shadow at 24 degrees Gemini today on July 8th. Now, the shadow period ends when Mercury reaches the degree at which he stationed retrograde originally on May 29th. So it was the Capricorn full moon on June 24th that asked us to release our attachment to any infantile behavior carried forth from childhood so that we may create fertile ground into which to implant karmically necessary seeds of self-nurturing self-compassion. And this becomes important because, hang on a second, sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. This becomes important because this Cancer new moon occurs so hard on the heels of the recent fixed T-square formed by Mars to Saturn, the opposition of Mars to Saturn and the square of Uranus mentioned earlier. So whether we deem the period leading up to this lunation, the Cancer new moon, one of sudden unexpected reversals of fortune, as I noted, and whether we deem these unexpected reversals of fortune to be positive or negative is dependent on where this T-square lands in one's personal chart. So now we have Venus in Leo's fiery trine to wounded healer Chiron, which occurred yesterday on July 7th, pushing us toward more outward expressions of grief, especially since the news that day that rescuers in Surfside, Florida no longer expect to find survivors buried in the rubble of the condo's June 24th collapse. So while the search continues for the remaining 94 people still missing, a collective howl of grief and despair arises now, not only for the 46 individuals already found deceased in the rubble, but for those 94 souls likely also lost to us as well. Now, for many, this aspect may also prove a trigger for expression of the pain, sorrow, and grief related to the 600,000+ lives lost in the U.S. alone during the past 18 months due to COVID-19, and a trigger as well for other lives lost to us in the past, regardless of the reasons why. Now, I noted last week about Venus trine Chiron, and I'm quoting here from my show last week, I'm a bit afraid that by this time, rescuers will undoubtedly continue to search for any missing bodies in Florida, but that it will be understood that they are looking for bodies and not survivors 13 or 14 days since the building came down. Now, Mercury in Gemini quincunxed Pluto in Capricorn earlier today, July 8th, and we may have found ourselves fixated on or obsessing about some of these losses, fretting about what to do and how to handle our responses moving forward. This energy calls for an adjustment in our thinking, however, and can help provide us greater peace of mind if we allow ourselves to be open to different perspectives now. And when Venus in Leo squares Uranus and Taurus later today, July 8th, the day before the Cancer new moon arrives, the goddess of beauty and love goes head to head with the question of whether and or how to seek greater excitement in our relationships. Now, Venus opposed Saturn July 6th and asked us to identify exactly where our commitment lies with our existing partners, and now Venus squares Uranus desires a lessening of such constraints. So if you're confused, welcome to the real world. Dichotomies abound always, and it's up to us to make sense of them all in our personal worlds. Watch, however, for external signs in the collective of partnerships confirmed and those impulsively left for greener, more exciting pastures. Perhaps noting who will turn witness against who in relevant and newsworthy court cases now may tell the story on an as above, so below level, the symbology of which may then make sense to us in our own individual personal lives. So through all of this, it's been up to us, again, to make sense of what's been happening as we lead into tomorrow's July 9th Cancer new moon. In other words, how can we extrapolate the messages from what's been going on in the collective down into our personal spheres? And how can we then use this information to develop and nurture a greater sense of self-compassion, compassion first for ourselves and then for others? As always, it's not what happens to or around us, it's what we do with it that counts. So those who follow astrology should note the symbology now, and that there's one thing of which we can be sure. There is a pattern here, and that pattern involves the slow erosion of what was thought previously to have been built upon a solid foundation. When we look at this literally, as in the news stories just mentioned, we might then choose to apply it also metaphorically. When we do the latter, it's easier to bring the as above, so below astrological principle down to earth and apply current energies to our own individual lives. So as the slow, steady drumbeat of erosion to our core foundational beliefs continues, and that's inherent in the transiting nodes of the South Node in Sagittarius and the North Node in Gemini, which I've spoken of before, but the cobwebs of confusion, illusion, and delusion are simultaneously being cleared away, any sense of dreamy, wishful thinking goes with it. As a result, we may plant seeds at this Cancer new moon that can blossom into the greater knowledge that without self-compassion, the world is a much less stable place. My recommendations are to meditate upon where our emotional structures are not as sound as we once thought, and to find ways to show ourselves the kindness necessary to fortify them. Only then can we begin to shore up our previous emotional foundations by fixing any cracks, replacing structures that no longer support our current emotional needs, and incorporating new ways to move forward from a much stronger emotional position. We're aided in this when Mercury enters Cancer July 11th, as long as we don't hide our vulnerabilities, but rather do more than apply patchwork solutions. This means digging more deeply into the reasons for our emotional vulnerability and sharing them rather than hiding them with the world. It's amazing how fear dissipates when it's exposed to sunlight, which disinfects all. We've got, I want to say, well, we also have Venus conjoining Mars in Leo on July 13th, a great time for self-expression through creativity and love. Maybe it's time to rewrite our life stories now and incorporate into them our need to partner with ourselves first. In doing so, others will find us more attractive and loving. And as I've said before, love is always an inside job. Now, by July 15th, the Cancer Sun forms a watery trine with Neptune in Pisces, and idealism will reign. This is fine, as long as we remember to try to see others clearly and to act charitably if we're so inclined, but with no expectation of anything in return. This is a great time to get in better touch with our spiritual nature and its true meaning and purpose, which makes it also the perfect time for metaphysical studies like those of astrology, and for meditation, prayer, creative and mindful endeavors, etc. Always go to that higher place. Also, on July 15th, wounded healer Chiron stations retrograde in Aries until December 19th. And this is a period when we'll be asked to go deep about what's wounded our soul, both early in this lifetime, as well as deeply embedded wounds we've carried forward from our past life experiences. Now, I'll talk more about this next week, but remember that this is happening as the monthly lunar cycle waxes, and we're called, along with the energy of Mercury in Cancer, until July 27th, to fix those cracks in our emotional foundation that may have been caused by previous wounding, and to fortify them in part by expressing them now without shame, blame, or guilt, so those seeds that we plant at this Cancer new moon can solidly root and grow into a healthy garden of self-compassion and self-love. Without such a foundation, we'll find it more difficult to move forward and feel compassion for others. And I've made the point already, but what I'm trying to say is that a lot of us may go around thinking we have compassion for others, but deflecting attention away from ourselves, which is one of the lower side energies of Cancer. So at this Cancer new moon, especially, like I said, if we've let go of that kind of behavior at the Capricorn full moon on June 24th, which asked us to release anything negative about Cancer energy, right? The Cancer archetype likes to hide behind being of service to other people, because it has the natural tendency to nurture and to be sensitive to other people's pain. So the Cancer new moon is not necessarily about first and foremost being compassionate to others. It's first and foremost about developing self-compassion, because once you develop self-compassion, then you can't not, double negative, have compassion for others. And along with all these other energies that have been mentioned, the sun moving into the trine to Neptune, which is going to be waxing tomorrow at the exact Cancer new moon, we're looking toward a period where we can say, all right, I have to take care of myself first. I can still be idealistic about the world. I can still be hopeful. But what is my contribution to that? Where is my creativity lie? Where can I look, again, without beating a dead horse, at the cracks in the foundation that I have previously been living with? Okay, so now I'd like to welcome back to today's show my guest, ALEX TRENOWETH. Alex, Agent 144 for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, is a school teacher and professional astrologer who specializes in child development, particularly the important adolescent stage of life. She speaks at astrology conferences around the world, contributes to important astrological publications, and has won several major awards for unique research based on her book Growing Pains, The Astrology of Adolescence, published by the Wessex Astrologer. Alex also recently authored the Adolescent Astrology Report, created to help parents and teachers better understand their own children as well as those they teach. Now president of the Certified Astrological Professional Program for the International Society of Astrological Research, known as ESAR, Alex recently started her own astrology school called Rohini Academy of Astrology. In addition, her new book, Mirror, Mirror, Famous People and the Actors Who Have Portrayed Them, with a foreword by Julia Parker, is due to be published soon. Welcome, Alex. How are you today?
Hi, Sherry. All's good. Been a lovely day today. It's warming up nicely in London. We've had a couple cold days recently, but it's nice and sunny for a change here.
Yeah, we've had the same, and I'm in the in New Jersey, just about 45 minutes out of New York, but closer to the coast. And we've had a couple of really gray and rainy days interspersed with really, really hot days, and we're gearing up for our hurricane season. So
oh wow,
hopefully that's something you guys never experienced in London.
No, I've never had. There isn't anything exciting like hurricanes in London. I mean.
Well,
there was a hurricane once, a long time ago before I came here, but the weather's pretty mild. I was saying to somebody, we don't even really get thunderstorms here.
Right. Yeah. You have a kind of gray summer usually, right? Is that right?
Have a few really blistering days, but then it starts to rain, and then September's usually quite nice, and then it's all downhill from there, really. It gets darker and colder.
I was just thinking, of course we have the summer solstice on June 21st, right? And it's like, I'm the type of person who likes to think that I am always a glass as half full, but all I can think of is, oh no, the days are going to start getting shorter now.
Yep.
So I'm like, stop with that pessimism, Sherry.
And, up here, because we're further up north in New York, it gets dark really, really early. I mean, when I was teaching, I'd leave my house in the dark and I'd come home in the dark. Because it starts getting dark around 3:30.
Yeah. And it's December. Even the same for those of us who commute, like in the New York area, you get up early because it takes you an hour and a half to get to your job. And by the time you get home, it's almost pitch black. If you leave the office at 5 o'clock, it's pretty dark by the time you get home. So anyway, let's talk some astrology. Just wondering if there's anything you'd like to share with our audience about the potential repercussions of today's Capricorn full moon, whether it's on a collective or a personal basis.
Well, because I've spoken to you before on your show, I knew you were going to give a little forecast, so I did something a little bit different. As I live here in London, we don't hear too much American news. So I went on CNN America and I looked to see what were the headlines. And Britney Spears is in the headlines, and I thought, hey, I haven't heard anything about Britney Spears, but I sort of went into this little rabbit hole about, how her father's been controlling her, and
right.
And so she's going to go through this hearing in a couple of days. So I thought, okay, well, she's going to be an interesting one. So let me pull up her chart, and I nearly fell out of my chair because tomorrow's full moon is right on her IC, which means the sun is on her midheaven. So, that was really interesting.
Okay. And it's today's full moon because we're pre-recording, but the show is going to air tomorrow. But that's okay. That's okay. I just didn't want anyone to get confused. Today's full moon. Yeah. But I think her appearance is today in the States. So tomorrow we will know probably. Well, I don't know if there'll be an outcome, but there'll be tons of news about what she looked like if they, were able to film it or take pictures or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, go ahead. So how do you think it'll play for her? What do you think? I mean,
well, I'm transiting Saturn is on her natal moon. Bang on. Same degree. Wow. Pluto is within 2 degrees of her north node and Venus in Capricorn. And transiting Venus is on her north node. So I'm thinking we're looking at a complete change in direction
Yep.
for Brittany. Now, the father, which I think is represented by the Saturn on her moon, I mean,
Yep.
that looks to me to be still quite ominous. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought to myself, well, maybe it won't be a complete break, but there's going to be some, there's going to be some changes going on for her. So, I was feeling, a little bit hopeful about that, she's going to get some control back, maybe not a complete break, but, more in control of her own life. So I think that's going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm wondering too if you have any insights you'd like to share, just because it's so much of what we astrologers talk about this whole year, that we just recently had the second Saturn Uranus square, and the final one won't occur until December 24th. Is there anything that you would like to talk about in relationship to that would help our audience navigate this a little better?
Yeah, just that I did a talk on this very topic for the
Mm-hmm.
Cosmic Intelligence Agency late last
Ah,
year. And there
cool.
were a few things and a few people that I picked up on.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there was the singer Odetta, who was born
Mm-hmm.
in 1930. She was born with a Saturn Uranus square. And she was often called the voice of the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
And she inspired lots of other singers. So we were talking about people protesting and wanting
Mm-hmm.
to change things. And I've noticed when I watch YouTube videos, because we watch a lot of those these days, I
Sure.
see a lot of people, reminding everybody, to be kind and be good, be polite, give people, be patient. And I think that's really good advice, for navigating the Saturn Uranus square, because it is all about, the things we thought we could rely on are being challenged. And so it's the new versus the old. As a teacher, as parents, we're seeing the educational system, really coming under a lot of pressure to change. And I said last time I was with you that I think this is good. It might not mean that, you can send your kids off to school, 6 or 7 hours a day, but I think that, we're recognizing that this old institution is no longer serving its purpose anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers realize that, we're teaching kids skills that they probably won't need in a few years' time. And we know that the children can outdo us on technology. If I have a problem with my phone, I'm going to give it to one of my children.
Right,
So
right,
they could
right.
they could fix it faster than I can.
Of
And
course.
so I just think a lot of old institutions will be coming under pressure and cracking and changing. We see it in astrology.
Sure.
The millennials are coming into astrology. They're changing it. They're making us aware of issues that maybe we haven't been thinking about too much. And you know, change is in the air.
Yep.
2021 is completely obliterated by Uranus
Yeah.
square Saturn. Nothing to be afraid of. Maybe obliterated wasn't a great word to use, but it's gonna
I'm,
change.
well, I'm thinking of asking you, the this trigger, because obviously Mars, it's not the fastest moving planet, but it moves much faster than the outers, and Jupiter and Saturn. Do you think we'll see a trigger here? I mean, that's generally what we would probably conclude, right? By the time that Mars finishes opposing Saturn and squaring Uranus in the short term.
Well, lots going on in the Sibley chart. The Sibley chart is the birth chart that astrologers use to to see what's going on in the USA. And the thing that I thought was interesting is that the sun, this happens every year, the sun is on the Venus of the USA. And of course, what a full moon means is that the moon is opposite this. So I looked at that and I thought, wow, American women, under stress. But, the stress, the thing about stress and tension is that an opposition shows that the tension can't be held. It has to be resolved. There has to be a decision made to eliminate this tension, as you were talking about in introduction.
Mhm.
So, I think, it's been building up for a while that, women are just getting tired of having things explained to them by men. And I went,
Mhm.
I went through this situation a couple days ago. I'm a weightlifter. And
Mhm.
I've been posting little videos of me lifting, very heavy weights. And some random guy who I wasn't even friends with sent me this message, giving me, several different reasons why I shouldn't be weightlifting and I should be swimming. And I tell you today, I wish I hadn't blocked him because I posted a video of me leg pressing 190 pounds
Mhm.
just
Wow.
to
You
just to
go,
show him,
girl.
just to show him. So I mean, I think it's that's just my personal example, but I think a lot of women are going through this when they're just tired of men telling them how to do things,
Wow.
And transiting Mars is on the north node of the USA. And, we know that with some of the things I've been reading about the USA, things have been quite hot in that, there are a big push for change and some acts of violence to get attention or to get the news coverage or whatever. It might be a thing, and it has been a thing over the past couple of years. But tensions, as you said, are really brewing, and of course, the USA is having its Pluto return,
Right.
which is quite a big thing too.
Right.
So but Jupiter just passed over the moon of the USA, so that's
Interesting.
buoyancy and confidence.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it's buoyancy and confidence and optimism in the world, but that need to fight, I think is something that's quite strong in the USA.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just pulled up the chart. I'm looking at Mars on the North Node. That's interesting to me because Mars rules the fourth and the fifth houses in the Ius Placidus. So we've got repercussions coming in the in the Cancerian fourth house and the fifth house. Sun Leo ruled fifth house, which is interesting. So maybe opportunities for us to change some perspectives from our habitual notions. Those that we grew up with. I just finished reading a couple of history books in the last couple of months. So U.S. history and the myth that was that many Americans were educated with, that is completely, that is at least partially, if not completely, untrue. That promoted the prejudice and things of that nature. And then the fifth house might be an opportunity for us to develop some creative solutions or take some creative actions around that, which would be lovely. If we can get there, if we can dialogue, right? Which brings me to another question, because I do want to get to talking about your book, but I just want to ask you one more thing about Mercury's stationing direct. How do you feel about some of what I talked about with the fact that it's still in its shadow period till it reaches about 24 Gemini around July 7th or 8th, and that we're having that final square? Because I don't know about anyone else, and this is for our listeners and you, Alex, but my mind has been mush. I have been so completely unable to focus, and I really am not that way, So this past month or two, it's just been weird. And I have to take my own advice, of course. But do you think that those of us who are experiencing that kind of confusion or change in direction, with Mercury's typical retrograde period, that, we'll come out of this haze and it'll be full speed ahead by, beginning to middle of July?
I'm going to say something controversial.
Yay, go ahead.
Like about 15% of the population, including Janis Joplin, Michael Jackson, and Hillary Clinton, I have natal Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
So I don't struggle. I mean, I love Mercury retrograde periods because everyone else is complaining about Mercury retrograde, and I'm just sailing through it, writing books, editing things, and doing all sorts of stuff. So I don't suffer through Mercury retrograde. Now, I've done a couple tests on Mercury retrograde. So as a teacher, there would be days, because our students here in England, they use a public transport system to get to school. We don't have separate school buses for schools. So there's some days when the buses will be late, traffic jam or whatever, and there'll be a notice going out to the school, to the teachers, don't have a go anybody who's late because the buses are late.
Right.
And so I started keeping track of this, wondering, does this happen more often with Mercury retrograde? And I found absolutely nothing to suggest that.
You know what? I've seen the same thing, studies by other astrologers, I think related to airports. And I think they concluded the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if it was Frank, but I know I've seen years ago, I saw something, but yeah, so that it's not necessarily, but it is true, I think, during Mercury retrograde, because it's related to local transportation. It can affect your car. It can affect I mean,
I've traveled all over the world, We don't get on planes all the time. Well, back before lockdown. And the only time I've ever had trouble with, there was one time when I was denied being able to board a plane because I was in South Africa and I was coming back to India, and I didn't have my plane ticket booked from India back to England. And so they made me do that before they let me board, and I missed the plane. That was when Mercury was direct. And I had a bike accident, Mercury was direct. So I've never found that any of these things that people describe during what should happen during Mercury retrograde has actually happened to me.
But don't you think too that's related to other transits in the chart? For example, I was supposed to go on a trip, and I had the day before I had a problem with the the electric window. My window wouldn't go up, right? And I was going to drive to the airport, to a parking lot near the airport, leave my car for 3, 4, 5 days, whatever, get the plane and go and come back. And I noticed, I think Jupiter was transiting my south node. And so I had to, panic. It was late in the day. I called the auto place. I was able to drop the car off overnight, but I had to leave at noon the next day in order to catch the flight. And the guy called me at 8 o'clock and said, "Oh, we fixed it. It's fine." So it was like, I don't think it had anything to do with Mercury retrograde, but Jupiter's travel, and I was traveling. I was probably going to California or something like that. I don't think I was going internationally, but, but yeah. So I think if things like that happen, we can look, if we don't see Mercury's retrograde, we can look at other reasons. So there's usually something we can relate it to. It's just that, some people.
I'm not the first person. I won't blame Mercury retrograde for anything. Because I think, as a god, he's antagonized by that. And I think if you start saying, "Oh, my computer crashed, blame Mercury retrograde," he's going to be coming right back to you and messing up more things. So I think, take him as he comes. He's retrograde 6-7 weeks of the year.
Exactly.
You can't stop everything
and I don't usually put too much behind the shadow period, which a lot do, because that elongates his retrograde periods even more, and it comes out to be like a third of the year or something. But I will say this, and I've said this before on my show, I believe the real purpose of Mercury retrograde is to allow us to suspend the ego-oriented left brain portion, logical, empirical, if you see it, you believe it, portion of the psyche, and allow Mercury to be the psychopomp. He goes down into the unconscious and he brings back into consciousness the information that's lying there, our soul's wisdom, to incorporate it into our conscious ego orientation of the world,
Now I like that a lot better, Sherry.
Oh, it's definitely, to me, that's it. So the thing is, if things happen to you during Mercury retrograde, and I have a million stories too, but I never went to look to see if it was during Mercury retrograde. It was probably before I even started doing astrology, like being on en route in a hired car to go from Jersey to New York to the pier to take my son on a cruise, and realizing I forgot some crucial information. At that time, it's a whole long story, but I was divorced and I needed my ex-husband's permission to take our son out of the country. And we were going down to Bermuda or something like that, to Nassau or whatever. And so I had to really scramble to get to the dock. And then, because I was fortunate that the ship wasn't leaving for several hours, was able to get someone, because I had the letter, I had just forgotten it at home. So I had to have a neighbor break into my house by crawling through an open window and go into my files or whatever, find the letter, go back to Staples or whatever and fax it, because back then not that many people had their home faxes, and get it to the ship before we left, So, stuff like that, forgetting your passport, when you're on your way to the airport, it's stuff like that has happened to me. But still, I still look at the reason that it might happen, if it was, let's just say, during Mercury retrograde, is because the left brain is suspended. You're busy working on other stuff. You're working on growing your wisdom, your ancient soul wisdom, and bringing it up from the underworld into the realm of consciousness. But we digress. Let's get on to your book. So tell us about your new book. I know, and I mentioned this in your intro, that it's titled Mirror, Mirror, Famous People and the Actors Who Have Portrayed Them. I'm interested in knowing what sparked your desire to write on this subject. I mean, I'm going to assume at the least you're a movie buff, but how was this book idea born?
Well, I was watching Julia and Julia, about Julia Child, the cook, and the
Mm-hmm.
blogger, the very famous blogger, who took on the Julia challenge to replicate all 500 of Julia's recipes in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, I was very fascinated with Julia Child. I liked her voice, and I liked, the way she did what she did with such passion.
So
And
funny.
I
I
was,
watched her too a little bit. Yeah, when I was young.
yeah. But I was at home with my mom, and we went
Mm-hmm.
went to the movies together, and I just completely forgot that Meryl Streep was Meryl Streep. And I was just so caught up in her performance as Julia Child. Meryl Streep is quite an average sized actress. Julia Child was 6'2", and
Mm-hmm.
with clever camera angles, they made her look really tall. And I was just absolutely fascinated. And I thought, just for a giggle, let me see the astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And what I discovered was that Julia Child and I have the same ascendant, 6 degrees Gemini,
Mm-hmm.
and the synastry between Meryl Streep and Julia Child was just remarkable. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Meryl was able to step into Julia because of all this great synastry.
Mm-hmm.
So that started me off watching a lot of biopics. So I watched Mata Hari, which is a 1935 biopic.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse James was another older one. I mean, and I watched probably about 200 biopics, all with the
Wow.
astrology, looking at the astrology. And then last year, I thought, okay, now it's time to start writing this all up. And so I probably had about 150, but we pared it down to less than that. But in every single case, the astrology was working. It wasn't like, I eliminated a movie from my book because the astrology wasn't working. It was all working, but we had to, narrow things down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite was Rocket Man, Taron
Mm.
Egerton and Elton John. I mean, I've always loved Elton's music, but
Right.
Taron Egerton is so cute. Well, they have a Sun Moon conjunction in Aries.
Oh, nice. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's just loads of examples. I just we found out that we left off the Imitation Game. So I had to go back and do the Imitation Game. So I give a bit of a synopsis of the film, and then I go into the astrology, and I'm not going in, every little detail. I'm, keeping it quite broad, but very tight aspects. 1 or 2
Okay.
degrees, conjunctions or oppositions, and because I thought, if you get too detailed, then it gets boring. And I was thinking, other people could take my data to the next level and write their own stuff for one of the magazines, astrology magazines out there. So,
Right. Right.
but it was a lot of
Interesting.
fun, and I
Yeah,
watched
I
it.
imagine it was. I mean, you're definitely a movie buff, I was raised by a mother who was a movie buff, so movie and theater, so we watched a lot of stuff too. And my parents back in the 60s when there wasn't any air conditioning in the summers in New York,
Oh,
so the movie theater was a respite on a weekend, and you could then, for one price, sit in the movie theater all day. So, not that we did, but they used to have double features, you know. So one would be a James Bond movie, and then there'd be a kiddie movie, or vice versa. So both of my parents were big, but particularly my mother, So it's cool. So anyone interested. So who's the primary audience for this book? Are you is the book for other people who are studying astrology, because you use charts and stuff, or is it for the layman as well?
I think I like to take that step when I um, am working with people who don't know much about astrology, but
Mm-hmm.
I aim to get them more interested. So it's
Mm,
not star sign stuff, although there are, suns conjunct sun and stuff like that. But it's meant for people to get more interested in astrology. So it does mention astrology, but if you don't want to read the astrology at the end of each movie, you don't have to. But the synopsis is there, and that's interesting. But that's who I write for. People who know their sun sign and maybe a little bit about astrology, but not the thing called synastry, which is comparing charts and getting them more interested, getting them practicing, looking at two charts together and things like that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I see in your book that you align your chapters, like you start each chapter with the outermost planet. I'm sorry, but you start each chapter with a planet, and you start with the outermost planet, Pluto, and then show the Pluto connections between the subjects of certain films and the actors who portray them. Can you give our listeners some examples of how other, how movies, actors, and real life people align astrologically? Just pick a few randomly so we get an idea. Pluto is obviously intense, and I think you've got some intense examples there.
Yeah. Okay. Just let me get myself.
Take your time.
So A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It's Tom Hulse. Sorry, not Tom Hulse. Tom Hanks and Fred Rogers. They were a very interesting thing because the in the movie, a journalist is very hurt and wounded with his relationship with his father, and he has to do a write-up on Mr. Rogers, and the journalist is very negative and doesn't believe. He thinks it's all an act.
Right.
But Mr. Rogers gets this journalist to work on his relationship with his father, and his father is dying. And so it was extremely interesting to see the effect. And there was one scene that actually made me cry. They were on the train together, and these kids were watching him and pointing at Mr. Rogers. And suddenly, like they'd all just kind of burst into "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood."
Right, I saw that clip. I didn't see the movie, but I saw that clip. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so adorable. But anyway, Fred Rogers has his Neptune at 26 degrees Leo, and Tom Hanks' Pluto is right on his Neptune. So this is just an example of how the transformation and the gentleness of Fred Rogers transforms Tom Hanks, who's playing this character. And so that's one example. Tom Hanks' Sun in Cancer is on Fred Rogers' natal Pluto.
Okay.
So it's things,
Pluto connections. Yeah.
So it's a lot of things like this. Tom Hanks' MC is on Fred Rogers' Jupiter in Virgo. And then also in this chapter is Al Capone. The very famous gangster. And the person who played him, Rod Steiger, actually refused to do the role because he said that he didn't want to glorify Al Capone. But the character is so deeply unpleasant that that didn't happen.
Horribly plutonic.
Yeah. Well, they have a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. And Rod Steiger's Pluto in Cancer is on Al Capone's South Node within a few degrees.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And the actor's Mars in Gemini is on the gangster's Pluto. So he's tapping right into that violence. And then Madame Curie, who worked with radioactive elements, she was played, Greer Garson played her in the movie. And she had, I'm just looking at the chart now, her South Node, the actress's South Node is on Madame Curie's Moon. And this is a very, very interesting.
Well, that implies some kind of past life connection, right?
Yeah, and I found actually the nodes are very, very important. I mean, just because it's in the Pluto chapter doesn't mean, and I don't talk about other things, but I found that the nodes were extremely important. And I also looked at the transits for when the movie was released.
Right, I was going to mention that. I saw that you draw a tri-wheel. Yeah, what do you learn through that? That's really interesting.
Well, certain themes of the film, because this is the first time the film was released to an audience, and we understand the character more because we've this film has been released. A good example is Alan Turing. Now, he was quite an obscure character because he was working on the Enigma code. So his military records were buried, and destroyed. And it's only because of the Imitation Game that we, start to understand what he did. He actually won the war, and saved millions of lives. And because of him, as Keira Knightley says in the film, because of him and his unusualness, cities were saved, and people are
cracking the codes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of fascinating stuff in that movie, and also just general stuff about World War II and code breaking.
Mm.
You know, I remember reading, I'm sure you know, I don't remember if it was in the movie or not, but um, I forget which tribe it is, but they used Native American language, the Americans, right? Are you
Mm.
familiar with that?
Yes, I can't remember
Yeah.
which one
I
it
can't
was, but
remember the specifics, yeah, but you know, nobody else knew the language clearly, so it was essentially kind of an unbreakable way to communicate,
yeah.
you know,
But
or impenetrable, yeah.
um,
Um,
Alan Turing had Uranus exactly conjunct his midheaven in Aquarius, and Benedict Cumberbatch had his Venus Saturn opposite to it within a 3-degree orb.
mhm,
So
mhm.
just another example how the actor is picking up on the character and projecting this, because clearly from the start of the movie, Turing has some sort of autism, and he doesn't understand how people what people say when they communicate, the
Mhm.
way most of us do. So maybe some Asperger's or something like that in there.
Right, right. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Mhm.
But it's absolutely fascinating. But the movie was released. It was Keira Knightley's Saturn return exactly,
Oh wow.
and Pluto was conjunct Clark, who was his fiance, Turing's fiance, the North Node in Capricorn, and she was kind of a hidden figure too. But this movie showed us how her affection for Turing helped him get along better with people, and
Mm,
therefore aided the building of the machine, which was called Christopher, but I think it was called Colossus in real life. But
mhm.
so little things like that about bringing things to life, and showing us the deeper meaning. And I think if you're an astrologer, even if you're a beginning astrologer, you're going to be able to understand, that's how they did it. It's not just about great acting and um, brilliant makeup. It's about understanding the person you're about to play, and the astrology helps you step in to the
Mhm.
person.
Mhm. So cool. Now we have about 5 minutes left. So I just want to ask you briefly, what was your favorite part about writing this book? And then I want you to share with everyone how they can get a copy of the book, you know, what else you've got going on, etc. But what did you enjoy most? I mean, I would assume it was watching all the films,
I was
but I
just going to
don't
say
know.
the book is dedicated to my kitty, Mr. Bubbles. And
Oh,
Mr. Bubbles
yeah.
and I, we watched all these films together, and he was my writing buddy too. He'd always be with me on
Oh.
my lap, purring away. But his last night on Earth was we were watching Lawrence of Arabia together, and I just like to think that between his cuddly human and Peter O'Toole, we gave him the best possible send off.
Oh.
And so the book is dedicated to Mr. Bubbles. He's mentioned on the back cover, and
Oh.
so that was my favorite part, was cuddling Mr. Bubbles, either watching a film or writing.
Oh, that's so sweet. And I always feel like pets are Virgoing, so there's a nice Virgo transfer there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Emotional bonding. Um, so tell everybody, because I don't think the book is released yet. Is that right?
We're still doing bits and pieces. I just sent off the
Okay.
imitation game yesterday, so we had to get that done. I just got the full cover, front and back cover, the other day. So we're still doing little bits and pieces of it, but we're hoping to launch. My birthday is July 20th, and my publisher's birthday is the 19th of July. So
Hmm.
I think we both are hoping that we can get the launch done before then.
Okay.
But
So
we're
in
so
about four
close.
weeks or so.
Yeah, this book took so much editing. If you can imagine, every movie had 3 bits of data in it, and
Right.
all the astrological stuff had to be checked as well. So it was a really, really slow process to get it
Yep.
edited.
Yep.
But
As a professional editor, I know it well.
thank goodness my editor, has that Virgo moon. So
Right,
she,
exactly. Yeah,
so I don't.
there's no one to edit but Virgos. I mean, you got to have Virgos somewhere. It doesn't have to be sun, moon, but or sixth house planets or something, or stellium or whatever. So, yeah, and fact checking and all that. Like where's what's the capital? What's the lowercase? What's the correct? I mean, it's just
Yeah,
yeah,
and we had
yeah,
to check it on the actual charts too. That all the
yep,
information, because because I wasn't doing it quickly. There were times when I missed out the capital of the of the title
right,
of the
right,
initial
right.
letter.
Well, then
So
even researching it becomes problematic because different sites you have to go, you have to know which is the reputable place to go to get, like I said, go to the source. But what's the source? You've got to really, you got to really research that. But so where can people buy it, and how can they contact you if they want to find out what else is going on? Do you have anything else going on your calendar? So give us the deets.
Yes. Okay. So you can buy advance copies through the Wessex Astrologer. But if you live in the States, it might be better to wait until it comes out on Amazon. There will be a book launch. Stormy Grace, if you've heard of her, she's going to be one of my hosts, and Yulia Simis from the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. So we have the USA and Australia and England launch, and we're hoping to start planning that very soon. As soon as we have a bit more of a confirmation of the
So where
release
can people go to find out more about that or sign up for these notifications?
Yes, you can find me on social media. I'm very creatively called ALEX TRENOWETH on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and it's also the name of my website. And so I'll keep information posted. You can join my newsletter is another way. There's lots of stuff on my website. The adolescent reports are on there. Is
the website your name? Is that
yes,
alextrenoweth.com? And it's
.co.uk.
Say that again. Sorry.
.co.uk.
Okay. So for those of us in the States, it's Alex, ALEX, and Trenoweth is TRENOWETH, .co.uk. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just wanted to make sure we get that straight. All right. Well, thank you, Alex, so much for making time to be with us today. Good luck with the book, and we'll keep a tab on when it's being launched, and maybe I can send me a little blip or something, and I'll make sure I announce it on the show again so people can just go directly. Oh, you're more than welcome. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks to everyone else for joining us today. I hope you've all found the information presented here helpful as you continue your karmic evolution in this lifetime. Be sure to join me next week, July 1st, for another episode of Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking. Till then, may your journey be filled with karmic healing and the joy of greater consciousness. Namaste.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to come